You're moving through the day like a machine. Inbox, calendar, deadlines, the same rhythm, the same pressure, the same silence behind the eyes. You smile when expected. You nod in meetings. You carry the weight of responsibility like a coat you forgot you're wearing. And then, suddenly, it happens. You see a child crouched on the sidewalk, utterly absorbed in a puddle of rainwater, not doing anything, just watching. And for a second, just one, something cracks open inside you. Not pain, not joy, something deeper, a memory, a feeling you can't name. It passes quickly. You return to the screen, but the moment lingers. Why? Because that child is not just seeing the puddle. They are in it. They are not separate from the world. They are part of it. And you, in that flash, remember what it felt like to be that close to life. Not as an observer, but as a participant. This is not nostalgia. It is a wound. A quiet, invisible wound. The loss of childlike wonder. Not the loss of toys or games, but of a way of being, a way of seeing that is direct, unmediated, alive. And it is this loss that the Little Prince speaks to, not as a children's story, but as a silent diagnosis of the modern soul. Written in 1943 by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, a French pilot, writer, and philosopher of the skies, the book emerged in exile during the collapse of Europe as a whisper against the machinery of war, bureaucracy, and rationality run dry. It was not an escape from reality, it was a deeper entry into it, because Saint-Exupéry understood that when the heart is silenced, even victory is meaningless.
The story begins with a crash. A pilot, the narrator, is stranded in the Sahara Desert. His plane is broken. His tools are useless. And in this moment of helplessness, he meets a boy with golden hair who asks him without introduction, "Draw me a sheep." Not a map, not a repair manual, a drawing. The adult mind resists. It wants logic, it wants utility. But the boy insists, and slowly the pilot begins to play, to imagine, to create. And in that act, absurd, childish, unnecessary, the first wall cracks. The adult world, built on control and function, is interrupted by something older, deeper: imagination, connection, presence. Because the Little Prince is not from Earth. He comes from asteroid B12, a planet so small he can watch the sunset 44 times a day by moving his chair. He tends to a single rose, vain, fragile, demanding, whom he loves without understanding why. He leaves her to travel among planets, each inhabited by a single adult. A king with no subjects, a businessman counting stars he claims to own, a lamplighter who lights and extinguishes his lamp every minute as his planet spins faster. These are not whimsical characters, they are archetypes, fragments of the adult psyche distorted by obsession, isolation, and the slow erosion of meaning. And the prince moves among them not with judgment, but with sorrow, because he sees what they cannot, that they are not living, they are performing. They are alone, not because no one is near, but because they have forgotten how to connect.
And here lies the central wound. We do not lose wonder because we grow up. We lose it because we are taught to betray ourselves. From the first time a child is told, "Stop daydreaming," to the school system that rewards memorization over curiosity, to the workplace that values output over insight, we are trained to suppress the inner world. We learn to see with the eyes,
which measure, compare, calculate, but lose the ability to see with the heart, which feels, loves, wonders. And the tragedy is not that we forget the child, it is that we exile them. We lock them inside, where they become silent, waiting. And the world we inherit as adults, fast, cold, efficient, is built by those who forgot. Jung called this the persona, the mask we wear to survive in society. But every persona requires a sacrifice. The parts of us that don't fit must be repressed. And the first to go is the inner child, the source of spontaneity, creativity, emotional truth. It is not childishness, it is childlikeness, a way of being present, open, trusting. And when neglected, it doesn't disappear. It becomes the shadow, not evil, but buried. It manifests as emptiness, restlessness, a quiet despair that no achievement can fill. You might call it burnout, or midlife crisis, or the feeling that something is missing even when you have everything. But it is, at its core, a longing to return.
The little prince is not a visitor from another world. He is a mirror. He reflects not the stars, but the soul. And what he reveals is this: the adult world is not more evolved, it is less awake. It has traded depth for efficiency, feeling for function, mystery for data, and in doing so, it has severed itself from the very thing that makes life worth living, the ability to see what cannot be measured. The fox will later say, "It is only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye." This is not poetry, it is psychology, it is philosophy, it is the core of what we have lost and what we must reclaim. Because the heart does not see facts, it sees meaning, it sees connection, it sees value not in utility, but in care. And this is where the inner child lives, in the space between what is and what matters. The child does not ask, "What can this be used for?" They ask, "What can I become with it?" A stick is not wood, it is a sword, a wand, a bridge. A cloud is not vapor, it is a dragon, a castle, a ship. This is not fantasy, it is imagination, a faculty as essential as reason, but one that modernity has systematically devalued. Jung understood this as a crisis of the psyche. When imagination is suppressed, the soul begins to atrophy. We become what he called one-sided, overdeveloped in intellect, underdeveloped in feeling, and the result is not intelligence, but alienation.
This alienation is visible in every planet the prince visits. The king rules over no one, yet demands obedience. He is the archetype of power without purpose, the executive who commands not to lead but to feel control. His entire identity depends on submission, even if there is no one to submit. He is not evil, he is empty. The vain man stands on a planet alone, begging the prince for admiration. He is the face of the modern ego, built not on self-knowledge, but on external validation. He needs applause, even if no one is watching. He is the social media profile, the curated image, the person who measures worth by likes, by titles, by the reflection in others' eyes. And when the prince leaves, the man waves, still waiting. He is not seen. He is performing to be seen. Then comes the drunkard, drinking, the prince learns, to forget the shame of drinking. This is not a joke. It is a spiral of self-destruction disguised as coping. He is the one who numbs himself with work, with substances, with distraction, not because he enjoys it, but because facing the silence would be worse. He is the person who says, "I'm fine," while collapsing inside. The businessman counts stars he claims to own, writing numbers in a ledger. "I am busy with matters of consequence," he says. But when the prince asks what good it does, he has no answer. He owns the stars, but has never looked at them. He is modern capitalism incarnate, accumulation without love, productivity without meaning. He is the one who says, "I work to live," but ends up living to work, and forgetting what living is for.
Then, the lamplighter, the only one the prince almost admires. His planet spins faster every year, forcing him to light and extinguish his lamp every minute. He follows orders faithfully, without question. He is not lazy, he is not corrupt, he is dedicated. But his dedication has no wisdom. He is the archetype of the overworked soul, the one who keeps moving because stopping would mean facing the emptiness beneath. He is the employee who answers emails at midnight, not because it's required, but because stillness is terrifying. He is the one who confuses motion with meaning. And the prince, with sorrow, says he might have stayed if the man had walked slowly under the stars with a friend. But he does not. He remains, lighting and extinguishing, a prisoner of his own duty. Finally, the geographer, who records mountains and rivers he has never seen. He values knowledge, but not experience. He is the intellect divorced from life, the scholar who knows everything about love, but has never loved. He is the person who reads books on happiness, but never feels joy. He is the analyst who dissects meaning until it dies. And when the prince asks about flowers, the geographer says, "We do not record flowers, they are ephemeral." But the prince knows better. His rose is ephemeral. She is vain, she is fragile, she hurts him. And yet, she is everything, because she is his, not because of her utility, but because of his care, because of the time he spent with her, because of the glass dome he placed over her to protect her from the wind. This is what the geographer cannot see. Meaning is not in permanence. It is in relationship.
These are not distant caricatures. They are fragments of ourselves. The king in our need for control, the vain man in our craving for approval, the drunkard in our ways of escape, the businessman in our obsession with success, the lamplighter in our relentless routine, the geographer in our overthinking, our analysis that replaces feeling. And the prince sees them all with quiet grief, not anger, not judgment, but sorrow, because he knows they have forgotten the only thing that gives life weight: connection. The fox will say, "You become responsible forever for what you have tamed." But these adults have tamed nothing. They are not responsible. They are isolated. They are alone, not because no one is near, but because they have shut out the heart. Kierkegaard understood this as despair, not sadness, but the sickness of the spirit. He wrote that most people live in inauthenticity, repeating roles, avoiding freedom, hiding from the terror of choice. To be authentic, one must make a leap of faith, not into religion, but into selfhood. A decision to live from the inside out, not from the outside in. The little prince makes that leap constantly. He leaves his planet. He risks loneliness. He loves the rose, knowing she is fragile. He befriends the fox, knowing it will hurt when he leaves. He doesn't calculate. He doesn't optimize. He chooses. And in choosing, he becomes real.
But we, as adults, have been taught to avoid choice, to follow paths, to minimize risk, to be reasonable. And in doing so, we trade authenticity for safety. We silence the inner child not because they are wrong, but because they are dangerous. Dangerous to a system that rewards compliance. dangerous to a life built on appearances. The child sees the rose as unique because he loves her. The adult sees her as one of many, to be replaced, to be optimized. And so, the world becomes colder, not because people are cruel, but because they are numb, and numbness is the true enemy of meaning. The tragedy is not that we grow up. The tragedy is that we believe growing up means leaving the child behind, as if maturity were a betrayal of the soul rather than its fulfillment. But Carl Jung never called for regression. He called for integration. This is the heart of individuation, not the triumph of the adult over the child, but their reunion. The adult brings structure, responsibility, reason. The child brings wonder, feeling, spontaneity. When separated, we live in fragments. When united, we live with meaning. And the little prince is not a call to abandon the world, but to re-enter it, not as a machine, but as a whole human being.
Because the world does not need more efficiency. It needs more aliveness. More people who can look at a flower and see not a biological specimen, but a mystery. More people who can listen to silence and hear not emptiness, but presence. More people who can love not because it is useful, but because it is true. The prince does not reject the adult world. He passes through it. He sees its absurdities, its loneliness, its emptiness. And yet he does not hate it. He pities it. Because he knows that behind every king, every businessman, every lamplighter, there was once a child who believed in magic. And that child is still there, not gone, not dead, just forgotten. This is the deepest psychological truth. The inner child is not in the past. It is in the present. It is not a memory. It is a living presence in the unconscious, the part of you that still feels joy at a sunrise, that still aches at a kind word, that still longs to create without purpose. And when neglected, it does not disappear. It becomes the shadow, not evil, but buried. It manifests as restlessness, burnout, a quiet despair that no achievement can fill. You might call it anxiety, or depression, or the feeling that you are living someone else's life. But it is, at its core, a cry from the self. I am still here. I am still alive. I am still waiting.
Jung saw this in his own life. After his break with Freud, he entered a period of profound inner crises, visions, dreams, voices. He called it a confrontation with the unconscious, and in that darkness, he began to dialogue with figures from his psyche, one of whom was a child. A small boy, radiant, playing with a wooden toy. At first, Jung resisted. He was a scientist, a doctor, a man of reason. But the child persisted, and slowly Jung understood this was not madness, it was healing. The child was not a regression, it was a return to wholeness. And so he began to play. He built stone villages by the lake. He drew mandalas. He listened. And in doing so, he did not lose his intellect. He reclaimed his soul. This is what modernity fears: play. Not entertainment, not distraction, but true play, spontaneous, purposeless, creative. The child does not play to achieve, they play to be. And in that being, they are fully alive. But the adult world has no place for such waste. It demands utility. It demands productivity. It demands that every moment be accounted for. And so we exile the child, not out of malice,
but out of fear. Fear of inefficiency, fear of being seen as weak, fear of not being enough. And in doing so, we sever ourselves from the source of renewal. The little prince embodies this play. He laughs at the king's seriousness. He questions the businessman's numbers. He dances with the stars. He tames the fox not through control, but through ritual, sitting nearby, day after day, until trust grows. And when the fox says, "You become responsible forever for what you have tamed," it is not a burden, it is a promise, a vow to care, to be present, to love. And this, Saint-Exupéry tells us, is the only thing that makes life real, not ownership, not success, not power. Love, because love is not a feeling, it is an act, a choice, a daily return to what matters. And the rose, fragile, vain, demanding, is not perfect, she is not even kind, but she is his, and that makes her unique, not because of her qualities, but because of his care, because of the time he spent with her, because of the glass dome he placed over her, because of the water he gave her. This is the great secret. What we care for becomes sacred, not because of what it is, but because of what we give to it. The world is full of roses, but only one is yours. Only one has your attention. Only one has your love. And that is what makes it irreplaceable.
Nietzsche saw this same truth in his concept of amor fati, love of fate. Not passive acceptance, but active embrace. To say yes to life, even in its pain, even in its imperfection. The prince does not love the rose because she is flawless. He loves her because she is his. And in loving her, he becomes who he is. This is not sentimentality, it is ontology, a metaphysics of care. And it is the antidote to the modern condition, a world that values only what can be measured, owned, optimized. But the heart knows better. The heart knows that meaning is not in the stars we count, but in the rose we water. Not in the titles we collect, but in the silence we share. Not in the achievements we display, but in the wounds we carry together. And when the prince decides to return to his rose, knowing she may not be there, knowing she may not love him back, he makes the most human decision possible, to choose love over safety, connection over control, presence over escape. This is the path of individuation, not to become powerful, but to become whole, to integrate the child who wonders with the adult who acts, to bring imagination into responsibility, to let the heart guide the hand. And it is not a one-time event, it is a daily practice, a constant return to what is essential.
The desert is not just a place. It is a state of being, a stripping away. No distractions, no roles, no noise, just silence, heat, and the slow unraveling of the persona. This is where the narrator, the adult, the pilot, the man of logic, meets the little prince, not by design, not by search, but by breakdown. His plane is broken, his tools are useless, his knowledge cannot fix the machine. And in that moment of helplessness, he becomes available, open, and the child appears, not from the sky, but from the soul. Because the desert is not outside, it is within. It is the inner landscape we all reach, sooner or later, when the structures we built begin to fail, when the job does not fulfill, when the relationship feels empty, when the achievements ring hollow. And in that silence, something stirs, a voice, a memory, a presence,
the inner child no longer buried, but emerging. This meeting is not accidental, it is archetypal. Jung saw such moments as moments of grace, when the unconscious breaks through not as chaos, but as healing. The child is not a regression, they are a guide. And their first request, "Draw me a sheep," is not childish, it is revolutionary. Because drawing is not utility, it is imagination, it is play. It is an act of creation that cannot be measured, optimized, or justified. And the pilot resists. He draws a sheep inside a box. He draws machines. He draws what is reasonable. But the prince rejects them, until finally the adult surrenders. He stops trying to be useful. He stops trying to be right. And in that surrender, something shifts. He begins to play, to imagine, to create. And in that act, he is no longer just a pilot. He is a human being.
This is the alchemy of the soul. When we stop doing, we begin to be. And in being, we remember. We remember that we were once that child, crouched by a puddle, absorbed in a cloud, lost in a story. We remember that wonder was not a phase, it was a way of life. And we did not lose it. We were taught to abandon it. We were told to grow up. But no one said we could bring the child with us. And so we left them behind. In the classroom, in the office, in the silence of a marriage that no longer speaks. And now in the desert, they return, not to take over, but to reintegrate. The prince's journey is not through space, it is through the layers of the psyche. Each planet is a defense mechanism. Each adult is a mask we wear to avoid feeling. The king is the part of us that needs control. The vain man is the part that craves approval. The businessman is the part that measures worth by output. The lamplighter is the part that moves to avoid stillness. The geographer is the part that thinks instead of feels. And the prince sees them all, not with judgment, but with compassion. Because he knows they are not evil, they are wounded. They are people who forgot how to love, not others, but themselves.
And this is where the fox enters. Not as a pet, not as a possession, but as a teacher. "You need to tame me," he says. And the prince, curious, asks what that means. The fox explains, it means to establish ties, to sit with someone day after day, to share silence, to build trust, to make time sacred. Taming is not domination, it is dedication. It is the slow, deliberate act of saying, "You matter. I am here. I see you." And in that process, both are transformed. The fox is no longer just a fox. The prince is no longer just a traveler. They are bound, not by utility, but by care. This is the antidote to modern alienation. Not more technology, not more productivity, not more self-help, but taming. The conscious choice to connect, to invest time in what cannot be measured, to love not because it is efficient, but because it is true. And when the prince must leave, the fox does not class him. He says, "You will be responsible, forever, for what you have tamed." This is not a burden. It is a legacy, a reminder that every bond we form changes us, that every relationship we nurture shapes the soul, and that love, even when it ends, is never wasted. Because love is not a transaction, it is a transformation. And the world does not need more transactions. It needs more transformations. More people who are willing to sit in silence with another human being. More people who can say, "I don't have a solution, but I'm here." More people who can look at a flawed, fragile, difficult person, like the rose, and say, "You are mine, I am yours." And that is enough.
This is what the adult has forgotten. Not how to work, but how to love. Not how to succeed, but how to stay. And the prince, in his simplicity, embodies this. He does not stay because it is easy. He stays because it is right. He returns to his rose not because she is perfect, but because she is his. And in that return, he becomes a whole human being. Not by rejecting the adult world, but by bringing the child into it. Kierkegaard called this authentic existence, a life lived from the inside out, not from the outside in. It requires courage. It requires faith, not in God, but in the self, in the truth that whispers beneath the noise. And that whisper is not saying, be more, it is saying, be you. The you who once believed in magic, the you who danced in the rain, the you who saw a stick and saw a sword. That you is not gone. They are waiting. And they are not asking for permission, they are asking for recognition. To see with the heart is not to reject reason, it is to place it in service of feeling. To let logic serve love, not replace it. To let efficiency serve care, not erase it. To let the adult protect the child, not exile them. And in that balance, we find not weakness, but strength. Not regression, but evolution. Not escape, but return.
Reclaiming childlike wonder is not a return to the past. It is a revolution in the present, a quiet rebellion against a world that equates busyness with worth, logic with truth, and productivity with purpose. It does not require abandoning your life, your job, your responsibilities, your routines. It requires only one thing: attention. The decision, moment by moment, to stop sleepwalking, to look, to feel, to remember that you are not a machine designed to function, but a soul designed to live. Because the inner child does not ask for much. They do not demand a vacation. They do not require wealth or fame. They ask only to be seen, to be heard, to be allowed to play, even for a minute. And this is where the practice begins, in the small, deliberate acts of presence that stitch the soul back together. Not grand gestures, not dramatic changes, but micro-rebellions against numbness. Start with pause. 1 moment a day, no more, where you stop. Not to scroll, not to plan, not to fix, just to be. Step outside, look at the sky, not to check the weather, but to see it. Watch the clouds move. Notice how the light changes. Feel the air on your skin. These are not distractions, they are portals. The child is not in the past, they are in this moment, waiting to be noticed. And when you pause, you are not wasting time, you are reclaiming it. Because time is not only measured in tasks completed, it is also measured in moments felt, and a single minute of true presence contains more life than 1,000 hours of rushing.
Then remember. Open an old notebook. Look at a childhood photo. Ask yourself, what did I love before the world told me it was useless? Was it drawing, stargazing, making up stories, building forts, playing music just because it felt right? That thing, whatever it was, is not gone. It is buried. And bringing it back, even in a small way, is an act of psychological reintegration. Jung called this active imagination, not fantasy, but dialogue with the unconscious. Close your eyes. Invite the child forward. Ask, what do you need? What have I forgotten? You may not hear words, but you will feel something, a warmth, a pull, a memory that rises like a tide. And when you act on it, when you draw, when you play, when you create, you are not being childish, you are being whole. Next, protect. The world will resist. It will say, you're wasting time, being impractical, not serious. But seriousness is often just fear in disguise. Fear of feeling, fear of being seen as soft, fear of not being enough. Say no, gently, firmly, to one obligation that drains your soul. Not all of them, just one. Let the email go unanswered for a day. Skip the meeting that adds nothing. Leave the party that leaves you empty. Each no is a yes to the self. Each boundary is a brick in the home you're rebuilding inside. The inner child does not need permission. They need protection, and you are their guardian now.
And finally, connect. Like the fox, relationships must be tamed, not controlled, not used, but nurtured through time and presence. Look someone in the eye without thinking of your next reply. Listen not to respond, but to understand. Share something true, not just polite. The fox says, "It is the time you have wasted on your rose that makes your rose so important." Waste time. On people, on moments, on silence. In a world that measures everything, be the one who gives freely. Because love is not efficient. It is excessive. It is irrational. It is what makes the ordinary sacred. These are not solutions. They are invitations to slow down, to feel, to remember, to care. And each one is a step back toward the heart, not away from the adult world, but through it. You don't need to escape to find wonder. You need to awaken within the world you're in. But awakening is not always gentle. It brings grief, the grief of seeing what you've lost, the grief of realizing how long you've been asleep. The narrator feels this when the prince prepares to leave. He does not want him to go. He has just learned to see again. And now the teacher is leaving. There is sorrow in that, but also grace. Because the prince does not stay. He returns to his rose, not because it is easy, but because it is right. And in that departure, he leaves behind not absence, but presence. A way of seeing, a truth, a heart. And so it is with us. We do not need the prince to stay. We need to become him, to return to our own roses, the people, the dreams, the values we left behind, not because they are perfect, but because they are ours, because we have tamed them, because we have loved them, and in loving them, we become real. This is the path of individuation, not to become powerful, but to become whole. To integrate the child who wonders with the adult who acts, to bring imagination into responsibility, to let the heart guide the hand. And it is not a one-time event. It is a daily practice, a constant return to what is essential. Because the world will keep demanding, it will keep measuring, it will keep telling you to grow up. But growing up does not mean giving up. It means growing into yourself, not away from the child, but toward them. toward the part of you that still knows how to see a sunset and feel it in your bones, toward the part that believes in magic, not because it denies reality, but because it sees deeper into it. And when you do, when you pause, remember, protect, connect, you are not escaping the world, you are healing it, one moment at a time.
The little prince does not stay. That is the final truth and the deepest lesson. He returns to his rose, not because it is safe, but because it is real. And the narrator, the adult, who has just learned to see again, must let him go. There is grief in that, a quiet sorrow. Because once you remember how to see, the world never looks the same. The grayness is still there. The meetings, the emails, the rush, they remain. But now you see through them. You see the child still alive beneath the surface. You see the rose in the mundane. You see the stars not as distant lights, but as homes. And you realize wonder was never lost. It was only forgotten. And forgetting is not permanent. It is asleep. And you can wake. This is not about happiness. It is about authenticity. About living from the center, not the edges. Nietzsche said, "Become who you are. Not who the world wants. Not who you were taught to be, but who you are. The fusion of child and adult, of heart and mind, of dream and duty. That is the self worth living for. And it is not found in a distant asteroid. It is found here, in the way you pour your coffee, in the pause before you reply, in the decision to look up at the sky, even when you're late." To reclaim wonder is not a return to innocence. It is a leap into maturity, a choice to live with eyes open and heart open, to care deeply in a world that rewards indifference, to love fiercely in a world that fears vulnerability, to see clearly in a world that profits from your blindness. And yes, it will cost you. You will be misunderstood. You will be called naive. You will feel the weight of the world pushing back. But you will also feel something else, aliveness. A quiet certainty that you are no longer sleepwalking, that you are finally present. The fox knew this. When the prince says he must leave, the fox does not beg him to stay. He says, "My life is sad. I am tamed." And the prince, confused, asks, "What good is it to you?" The fox replies, "It is the color of the wheat fields." Because now when he sees golden wheat, he will think of the prince's hair. The pain of separation is real, but so is the beauty it leaves behind. Love is not about possession. It is about transformation. And even in loss, there is meaning. This is the paradox. To love is to risk loss, but not to love is to lose yourself. And the adult world, in its fear of pain, chooses the latter. It avoids deep bonds. It keeps relationships superficial. It measures love by convenience, not care. And in doing so, it loses not only others, but itself. The inner child does not fear pain. They fear irrelevance. They fear being ignored. And when they are, they retreat. But when they are seen, they come alive, and with them the whole soul awakens. This channel, Psikelogy, exists for this awakening, not to entertain, not to distract, but to remind you of what you already know, deep down, beneath the noise. If this video stirred something in you, a memory, a longing, a tear you didn't expect, then it has served its purpose, because the heart still knows the way. If you feel disconnected, if you've forgotten how to see, if you're tired of living by the eyes alone, this space is for you. Subscribe to Psikelogy, turn on the bell. The next videos will go deeper into the soul, the shadows, and the quiet revolutions that begin within. Leave a comment, just one word, I remember, or the rose, or I'm ready. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, because sometimes a single story told at the right time can reopen a heart that had closed. And when you look at the stars tonight, know this: you are not late, you are not broken, you are not alone. You are simply remembering how to see. And that is enough. Because the most essential things, love, connection, wonder, were never lost. They were only waiting, and you, by listening, have already begun to return.